Alrighty, everybody, welcome back to StarCraft 2 Random Commander Gamble. Let's go with hard. Today's conversation: why
Why? Why?
I like communism. Alright, looks like we are playing some Phoenix, also known as Talendar, once we get a forge up and running. Good luck, have fun. Good luck, have fun. Wait, pylon. There we go. Okay, so we need to purge that thing, which really just means escort the payload. Okay, so today's topic is going to be the dirty C word. Communism in the United States, especially, has been the enemy of peace, unity, and all good, peaceful things, apparently, over the past 100 or so years. And it's important to understand why that is the case. For a lot of people who may not have heard of that term or are not familiar with using it in a conversation, that's entirely okay. And there's a lot, like, I just want to say that right off the bat. It is a-okay for you to hear me say that word and you have a negative reaction right off the bat. You say, oh my God, did you just say communism? Or how could you believe that? Didn't that ideology kill 16 quadrillion people? And the answer is, you know what? Sure. If that's if that's what you believe, and you're hell bent on believing that an ideology of global liberation caused the deaths of 16 billion quadrillion people, then you know what? Go ahead. The only thing that I would ask in response, though, is how many people have died under the exploitive nature of capitalism? Because it might be slightly higher than 16 quadrillion. Ravishing infestation today. I will be going carriers then. And in order to facilitate that process as fast as possible, we're going to need some of those. I'm also going to need another one of those. And I'm going to need one of those. Alright. And I should probably get something on the field now. But it looks like our Zagara is pretty good about this. Phoenix is controlled from a drop bar down here at the top. Oh, you know what? I don't think I actually need anything because I can control Phoenix. Phoenix is actually 3 heroes in 1 hero, which is really nice. Bonk. So I can alternate between these different modes that he has, um, and based on whatever we need. So, like, I could switch here, and now I'm a Dragoon that outranges that thing. Thank you, thank you. Ooh, looks like I got all caps on. But why, Warbling Ox? Why would you throw your life away for this idea of communism, even though you're fully aware of the 16 quadrillion deaths? It's because there is a better world out there for all of us, and that's something that I believe fundamentally. There is the world that we have around us, and I've talked about this in my other videos. This story that we're currently operating with, there's no way that this is the end all be all peak of human existence. And I reject very much so anyone who says that, oh, greatest system on the planet and all that stuff. And my reason for rejecting that so deeply is because if you or someone you know is affected by colonial imperialism in that way, that they believe that this is the peak of human existence, quote unquote, then they are woefully not aware of the sins of capitalism. I think that the thing that made me feel like communism is the only, and not socialism. I'm not talking, oh, we need more like socialist practices and all that stuff. I'm talking communism. I'm talking we need a people controlled state. a state that is in the hands of the ruling class is no state for you and me. Because I also guarantee that if you're watching this video, you probably don't belong to the billionaire class. You may want to, that's entirely true. You may really want to. However, I hate to break it to you, but unless you're willing to exploit, dozens, hundreds, thousands, if not millions of people in order to obtain your goals, you're not going to belong to the billionaire class. Um, However, if you are willing to do that, then that's an entirely separate conversation that I'd like to have over with you here by the wall. I'm joking. I'm joking. Okay. Well, I'm just keeping this thing stalled. Let's get our carrier launch gate going. Shield and that. Let's get you here. I think I'll only be able to make like 3 carriers at a time, so we'll just call it good with 3. And we'll get a hotbar on 1, sent over to Phoenix, Talendar. Let's swap suits so I can get some energy back. We'll go there for 2, there for 3, and that should be really all that we need. We're going to go there. Oops. Overdid it by a couple. No, underdid it by 1. Goodness. Bonk. Let's take out those DPS real quick. But yeah, so communism is a concept that involves, I think, this is off the top of my head. The goal of the communist movement is to reassert control over over the means of production in society, taking that away from the people who currently hold it. They are called the bourgeois, but for all intents and purposes, they're just the billionaire class. The people who own everything, and the corporations who, they subscribe to. Taking away the means of production, the means of production meaning the ability to live itself, taking that away from them and putting it into the hands of everyday people, because ultimately everybody should be the people who own the fate of their lives. That's the idea at the most core of core, is that it is just one of redistributing wealth. Not only the redistribution of wealth, the redistribution of systems that enable wealth to go to the top. So making it so that we don't have people who are in the capacity to exploit others to such an extent that they can enrich themselves beyond comprehension in comparison to the overall amount of wealth. And because money is everything in this society, that wealth doesn't then become an inordinate amount of power over others. And where my citations for that, if you are like, what are you talking about? Wealth is separate from power. A, you're lying to yourself, and you know it, because if you're in the U.S., born in the U.S. or have come to the U.S. at any point in time, I didn't mean to. Subscribe to a nationalist idea right there of like, oh, you need to be born in the U.S. to really understand capitalism. That's not the case. Anybody can understand capitalism and its benefits of exploitation. As we've seen throughout history, there's no colonization, there's no genocide that was done entirely. There's always people who have realized that, like, entirely without the aid, whether coerced, because a lot of the time it is coerced. Um, Coerced or not, sometimes complicit, but people have always been tempted by power. And so long as we have the grounds that exist that enable the temptation of power, then we will have people who will exploit others for their own personal gain. And communists seek to remove that from the capacity of social systems. Also, I want to say that if you look at what you're likely familiar with, um, oh wait, no, 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 I'm still talking about why I subscribe to communism. Why I subscribe to communism is because there is uh, it is it was one of the first ideologies that was presented to me that showed a clear path to the liberation of people by tying directly this idea, because I grew up in the US. I was taught US propaganda. That US propaganda taught me that US is always the good guys and all that stuff. Then I started reading history books, and that was not true. And I knew that that wasn't true. So because I knew that that wasn't true, I said, "Oh my God, there has to be a way for there has to be a way to make actual justice, you know?" And communism was the first ideology that said, "Hey, you know what? No one is better than anyone else." Like, there's nothing that makes American and the idea, if you're not familiar with it, it's called American exceptionalism. There's nothing that makes America exceptional besides its capacity and willingness to exploit other people. That's what, honestly, that has what made America special, um, especially over the past like 250 years of its existence. And that is also what made England special before then. And before England, that is what made Rome special. It's their willingness to exploit other people for their own personal gain. And so when I noticed this pattern in history of, hey, wait a minute, the good guys are always the ones, or like, the history books that are written by victors are always the ones who were the most willing and acted in the most lethal way to assert their control and domination over other people. Now, what I think I like the most about communism is that it is entirely accurate about the economic flow of capital. How it is not only taken from the lower class of people, the people whose labor is most often exploited, um, but also the systems that we have in place create conditions to steal not only from like the workers, or like the lowest people in society in any one uh, nation, but also across the entire globe. I mean, that's why you have concepts and stories like the West versus like the global South. If you've ever heard that phrase before, the global South, what does that mean? It means everybody who basically isn't white, because the United States operates under a white supremacist empire, and we engage in every way, shape, and form to exploit the labor, time, and effort of all the other people across the globe in order to enrich ourselves. And I personally don't like that. If you also don't like that, I hate to say it, but you might be a communist. In your heart of hearts, if you have ever followed tenets of empathy, tenets of kindness, consideration, basic human dignity, and all that stuff, then it's very likely that you have been subscribing to ideas of communism your entire life. But we have been programmed, and programmed is a very intentional word that I'm using, to run from this word of communism. If you'd like to hear more about it, then I would love to talk about it more. Go ahead and leave a comment, or I don't know how YouTube DMs work, but don't DM me. Also, if you're going to be mean, I'm totally going to block you. um, but sorry, that what's that called, derailed my line of thought for a second. Okay, while I reassert control over my own line of thoughts and conversations, because I feel like that was the longest that I've been talking for a while. Good job, Warbling Ox. Um, oh, yeah. So, if you have been raised on anti communist propaganda your entire life, taught to uh, that, you are better than other people, or other people are better than you, then I totally understand how it might be tough to conceptualize a world where uh, being a good person is actually a good thing, because caring about others is very important. But the way that capitalism has made it so that it is has been de-incentivized to be a good person, to care for others, is that they have given so many benefits to all of the people who are willing to exploit others, whether passively or, if not outright exploit others, to participate in one's own exploitation. So if you are walking around and you say, well, yeah, I only get paid, $7.25 an hour, which is federal minimum wage in this country, which is miles below, uh, the cost of living and all that stuff. If you're like, well, yeah, I'm fine with that because that $7.25 enables me to barely make ends meet, to barely pay rent on a house that I don't even own, but I get to go out and eat the food that I like, or I get to go out to brunch. So long as I get to go out to brunch, then I'm 100% fine with the conditions of my own exploitation. I'm saying that that idea right there, you have been trained to think that. You have been trained to be okay with your own exploitation, and also to defend capital with your entirety of your existence, so that way you can continue to have the things in life that you enjoy. I'm saying, like, there's nothing wrong with being oppressed. There's everything wrong with knowing that you're oppressed and still complying with a system that enables the oppression of yourself and other people. Again, I think I mentioned it a little bit earlier, but if I hadn't, communism leads to a liberatory idea, liberatory meaning freeing, a liberatory idea that unless everyone on the entire planet is free from the exploitation that capitalism brings, then no one is free. Because so long as we have a story, an idea, and I've talked about this in my other videos, where other people can be exploited or other people deserve, quote unquote, to be exploited, then eventually that logic will come back for you. That is the logic of fascism. That is the logic of imperialism. That is the logic of the Antichrist. I'm joking. I'm joking. But no, I'm saying that those are my reasons as to why I have been attracted to this idea of communism. And even beyond that is the idea of Afro-pessimism, which allows for a lot clearer explanation to the nature of imperialism. So go ahead and if you need any book recommendations, please leave me a comment. If you want to join a book club, please leave me a comment. If you want to, go onto YouTube and publicly announce how much you hate me and communism and all that stuff, please go ahead. Um, I I would be interested to see why, I guess. In the meantime, I'll see y'all in the next video, and that was Phoenix Hard Random Gamble.